What is going on here?
One reason for Monsanto's immense success in the seed business is their creative use of patents on their seeds. Farmers who plant Monsanto's GMO seeds are subject to strict rules about what they can actually do with them. They are not allowed, for example, to replant these seeds, nor to sell or share them with anyone else, thus ensuring that Monsanto's revenue remains stable and growing. The language of these rules is so convoluted that farmers could potentially be found liable even in cases when the wind randomly blows Monsanto seeds from a neighbor's farm. To complete its transformation into an agricultural behemoth, in 1997 Monsanto spun off the entirety of its chemical business into a separate company called Solutia. This was Monsanto's attempt at a fresh start, and on their website they even claimed to be a relatively new company that just happens to share the same name with its polluting predecessor. Of course, this was all for show, as the new Monsanto's executives were the same people that had led the old company for decades. What they did with Solutia was to essentially try to wash their hands of Monsanto's morally questionable past. Solutia inherited not only the struggling chemical business, but also the majority of litigation relating to Monsanto's PCBs and other industrial pollutants. It probably won't come as a surprise that just 6 years later, Solutia filed for bankruptcy, only to be eventually swallowed up by the Eastman Chemical Company. The new Monsanto, of course, has been incapable of shaking off its bad reputation, but that hasn't stopped its global expansion. Today, it's bigger than ever, with $15 billion of revenue just from last year alone. About half of that money, by the way, came from the sales of the Roundup pesticide and the GMO seeds resistant to it. It's sad how, despite all the boycotting and controversies, Monsanto's products are so ingrained in modern agriculture that there's just no getting rid of them. By all accounts, Monsanto is here to stay, but it's actually very possible that they'll soon stop being an independent company. Germany's pharmaceutical titan Bayer, on which we've also done a video by the way, had been trying to acquire Monsanto for the past 4 months. Just a few days ago, Monsanto accepted a $66 billion all-cash offer, which still needs regulatory approval, sure, but consider this. In the past 14 months, we've seen the mergers of 6 of the biggest companies in the industry, and so far analysts are giving the Bayer-Monsanto merger a 50% chance of going through. Even if the merger fails though, it's very hard to be optimistic about a Monsanto-free future. From an investment point of view, it would make sense to buy shares of the company that controls the world's food supply, but sometimes it's better to forego revenue in order to actually make the world a better place.
The money machine, I name it the money machine, to talk about the new ways in which money is being created and accumulated. Intellectual property rights and patents is central. It's a rent collecting system. Not paying taxes is a second. Look at Amazon wanting to come to New York. It destroyed India's systems. It's destroyed India's taxation systems for its own facility. And now...
How?
Well, they got the government to create one uniform tax and to all be paid on digital, on computers. A little corner store in a little town cannot do it. They get wiped out overnight. And meantime, the reason Bezos became richer than Bill Gates is because of India, and he's acknowledged it.
Explain that further.
Well, by changing the taxation systems.
How did he change it?
By putting influence on the government of India, because just like there's a federal structure in America and your taxation system in Massachusetts is different from the taxation system of Oregon is different from the taxation system in New York, they made it one uniform GST. Before that, Bill Gates, and I have a story in there, how Bill Gates and the other IT industry worked to get cash banned. They called it the war on cash. Now, 90% of India's economy is cash. Overnight, everyone lost their lifetime savings. Everyone was made poor. Everyone was made vulnerable. Demonetization is what it was called, and the GST. These are the two things that are being debated in our national election lead-up right now. Bezos is now working with our dear Bill Gates. They want a 0% duty on e-commerce. Does it mean that when they ship things, they don't ship goods? No, they ship goods, but with zero taxation. The person on the ground in a real local economy will be paying a tax. As it is, they have become more expensive. The real economy has been made artificially more expensive because of the cheating by the money machine.
How did Bill Gates come to exert such power?
Well, as is known and is in the book, Bill Gates did not invent anything. The basic program was made by some mathematics professors in a college. The Office operating system was by a software engineer, and he bought it for $50,000. He's built the empire by creating patents on software. And the first WTO meeting in Singapore gave him tax concessions, which is why all the IT industry moved to India. The fact that Silicon Valley became India's Silicon Valley is because they could save $40 billion annually by paying lower wages for the same work. It was an outsourcing of software, all for Bill Gates.
This has to do with the idea that philanthropy today often feels, or people would argue, that it credentializes people. It credentializes certain people. There have been a number of reports, including in the New York Times, and you know where I'm going with this, about a handful of meetings, if not more, that you took with Jeffrey Epstein after he had been convicted as a sexual offender. And I know that you have said it was a mistake and that it was something that you wished you had not done in retrospect. But I'm curious now, with hindsight, since those stories came out, what you think the lesson of that was, and when you think about that as an experience and this credentializing idea.
Well, definitely, any people with a reputation spending time with him probably gave him an undeserved sense of, being back in the mainstream or not being a pariah. And so my doing that was a mistake. As I go about trying to raise money for global health, which, every extra $1,000 we raise for that cause saves one life. And so we are extremely resource limited. We can buy more bed nets, we can buy more vaccines. In that case, I made a mistaken judgment that I thought that those discussions would lead literally to billions of dollars going to global health. Turned out that was a bad judgment. That was a mirage. None of that money ever appeared. And I gave him some benefit by the association. So I made a doubly wrong mistake there. In general, when we have something like the Giving Pledge, it is tricky when, somebody wants to sign up and you're like, well, but countries that we just haven't done any recruiting in at all because we're not, in a position to really make those judgments.
Because you look and you see the corruption.
Yes, that it may have been derived improperly. And I feel bad. We probably will, is a disreputable fortune. It is, as you're engaging in this, if you really want to get out there and get, more people drawn into philanthropy, there is a risk that you'll make a mistake.
What is going